Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, deeply and sincerely for joining me in this moment. The topic for today's podcast is gratefully present. It is my pleasure to introduce today's guest host, Tami Sharp. Tami is a clinical hypnotherapist, life and love coach. I chose this topic because I feel that gratitude and being grateful is one of the quintessential presence tools. It's something that we can use at any time during our day in our life to help shift us into the present moment. It's certainly a presence tool that I speak about quite often, and I felt it was worthy of taking some time to actually have a whole podcast about it. So I invited Tami here because I felt like she has some experience with this subject. Tami, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tami, I was hoping you could spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about to introduce yourself to our audience so that they know who you are, where you've come from, and some of the things that you're up to.
Awesome. Yes, so I grew up in Washington State, and then I had the privilege of living on Maui in Hawaii for almost 10 years, and I learned so many life lessons there. I was married, I owned a business, I had my cars, I had everything I thought that I wanted, and within a 6-month time frame, I had my life blow up. I lost everything, and it stripped me down to nothing, really. And I had to build myself up and reassess what was really important to me in life. And it took a long time to heal from it and find myself. But the lessons that I learned on Maui were profound. And now I fast forward, that was about 6-7 years ago. I now have a 2-year-old daughter, and I moved to Arizona about a year and a half ago, and I started attending school at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts and got my certification as a life coach and a clinical hypnotherapist. And now I am building my practice and teaching about being present and what it means to really be grateful for everything. The tears, the hardships, the mistakes, the failures. That stuff is where the gold and the magic is.
You know, in one of my podcasts, on podcast number 9, Acceptance of the Present Moment, you raise a good point. Not every moment is going to feel good. A lot of our present moments don't necessarily feel good. It really tests us. Mm-hmm. And it takes a certain level of gratitude to accept a present moment that is adverse to how we necessarily want to feel. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it would be interesting to delve a little bit more into gratitude. So through your experience of love and loss, mm-hmm. How did you come to the realization that either you weren't being grateful enough, you needed to be more grateful? How did gratitude play into all of that?
That's actually a kind of fun story. My ex-husband, which I don't want to get too much into that part of it, but he was very unhappy. And because we were together and we were partners, I was very unhappy. And I would have to come home every single day and sit down with him and ask him to tell me 3 things he was thankful for. And you would think that that would be easy, but he could not do it. And I hated it. I loathed coming home every day. I loathed that we had to do that. But now I am super thankful because I unknowingly trained my conscious and my subconscious mind to be grateful for everything, because when he couldn't find the gratitude, I did. I'm thankful that the sky is blue, that I can see the sky, that we have a house, that we have toilet paper. And the pivotal moment for me, I'm going to be talking about this a lot in an upcoming book that I'm doing, but he was home with some tummy trauma, we'll put it that way. And I came home and he was complaining about how awful his day was. And me working in a bar at the time where I had no privacy, I was the only bartender on duty. I could not take more than about 30 seconds to use the restroom. He had the whole day to just have tummy trauma. He had 2 toilets, running water, toilet paper, the works. And I went off on him and I was like, you had everything, that's all you needed to do. Why can't you just be thankful? And that was about 8 years ago that moment happened. And I swear every single time, anytime I have any kind of tummy trauma, I instantly go into gratitude. And so it's my doo-doo story that turned out to make it really awesome. But that taught me really getting into the knit and grit of gratitude.
You raise a good point. I think when gratitude is presented to people, they have this idea that there has to be some grandiose person, place, or thing that they need to be grateful for. It's actually being grateful for the minutia, for the small things in life that is the most important. So, and it's usually the small things that we take for granted.
Absolutely.
So if we can sit down and be grateful for the sky, for the sun, for whatever it is, those are the things that are so easy that we can pick apart and that can help shift us into the present moment. I talk a lot about creating a mindfulness exercise in the morning. And one of the components that I like to swap in, that I suggest for some of the people I work with, is a gratitude page. And when I'm presenting it, I have to be really clear that the things that you're grateful for can be the small things in life, because ultimately those are the most important things. We just tend to overlook them. And a good suggestion for our audience today is to sit down, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon or the evening, and create a list on a page of all the things that you're grateful for. And read that list over. And maybe instead of that, you just want to pick one thing that you're grateful for and then start writing about why you're grateful for it. But this is the kind of exercise, this is the presence tool that can be used at any point in your day, especially when you're not being present, especially when you're struggling. And you could do it with a presence partner too. You could do it out loud. You can share together what you're grateful for each other.
Relationships, that's a huge thing. Writing it down, it does that. You can do it in your head, and I do. Every step of the day, I am giving thanks in my head for something. But to sit down and write it down, pen to paper, you can use your tablets or whatever, but pen to paper, there's really nothing else like that. And you can start with the smallest thing and build off of that. And it is I use a very similar tool with my clients. But in relationships, especially when you're fighting and things aren't so peachy keen, to sit down separately and write your gratitude list of what you're grateful for in that other person. And kind of, with going into universal law of attraction, don't focus on the don't, focus on the present, the positive, eliminating no, don't, can't from your vocabulary. And if you're really struggling with something that you don't like, write that sentence down, cross it out, reframe it into the positive, and then find the gratitude in that.
You mentioned the law of attraction, and if we're going to just make this a little bit easier for people who have no background into what that is, like attracts like. And so when you focus on things, whether you like them or not, you tend to pull those things closer to you. So when we use a tool like gratitude, and we get into that feeling space, and it's the feeling space more than it is actually even the activity, we tend to pull those things closer to us. And so that's why it's so important to pay attention to the things that make you feel good, because you want more of those things. When we get into the habit of looking at things that we don't like, talking about things that we don't like, we tend to inadvertently, subconsciously pull those things closer to us. And so having a daily, weekly, whatever exercise of gratitude will get you into a better feeling space, and it'll also keep you into the present moment, more importantly. And if you're in the present moment and you're in that feeling space, that's where the true magic happens. That's where things tend to unfold right in front of your eyes. And that's why having a mindfulness exercise, a mindfulness practice on a daily basis will keep you into that state. It helps to build that baseline. And if you inject gratitude into that baseline of peace and stillness, your life is going to be exactly how you want it to be. And you don't have to be a victim of circumstance. You can actually be the manifester instead. With that being said, I do believe, and it has been my experience, that the more happy, content people in life are definitely the more grateful. Tami, you talked a little bit about your ex-husband, and I'm sure that his lack of gratitude wasn't his core issue. Correct. But it's pretty emblematic for people in society, and along with the people that I've worked with and the experiences I've personally had, that there is a lack of gratitude for what we have, because we're always focused on what we don't have or what we want or where we're going. And it takes a shift of consciousness more than anything, a reminder. And maybe this is the first reminder for the people listening to this podcast to say, wait a second, am I being grateful? Am I being present? What does gratitude have to do with anything? Well, gratitude has everything to do with everything. And I think that's the message here, is that we have to be grateful. We have to be honest with ourselves when we're not being grateful. We have to be conscious for the things that we are grateful for the people that we're grateful for, because there's another issue. When we're not grateful for what we have, those things tend to disappear. They just do. We lose focus, we lose consciousness, and they slip between our fingers. And if you really want to hold on to the things, the people, places, and things in your life, and I say hold on to, and I say that very respectfully, because you have to allow life to pass through you. You have to be grateful for what you have. And I'm sure that there are people out there that are unhappy with their situations right now. And that's okay. But there's always something or someone to be grateful for. So sit down and take some time. And it might not show up right away, but it's a worthy endeavor to cycle through your life. And even if it feels like it's a struggle, to pick apart what things are going really well for you. And then really only focus on that. You can strive for more. But sit down and think about what it is, what blessings you have, who's helped you, who's helping you, what makes you feel good. And even if it's the minutia, this is what you need to focus on. This will allow for presence.
There's a couple of things that you said. One, for the people that may be new to presence and gratitude. It said, first of all, that depression comes from kind of hanging on and thinking about the past. Anxiety comes from thinking too far ahead. And what we really only have control of is right now, this very second. And a lot of people get hung up either in the past or in the future, and they spiral and they stay either, stuck, stagnant, they stay the victim of their story. Or I have a lot of friends that have anxiety, and they are constantly worried about all the things that they have to do. And you don't have to do anything. There are things that you get to do. There are things that you're choosing to do. Whether you feel forced, like you really don't have a choice, you always have a choice. We have free will. The consequences may shake things up, but that's not always a bad thing. And when you're present in the moment, even if your situation seems hopeless and dark, there are lessons for you there. And if you talk to anyone, we've all been through stuff, and there are dark times in our life. There's shadow side, and guilt and shame are some of the lowest energetic vibrations that we hold. And a lot of people are holding on to guilt and shame. And first of all, to instantly increase that vibration, just be thankful for the guilt and the shame. Own it. Take responsibility and don't add more negative to that. Be thankful for the crappy times in your life. You're not stuck there. It's transitional. It's teaching you something. If you have a pattern showing up in your life where we'll talk relationships for this one, because that's where a lot of people keep hitting blocks and things come up. What is going on? Not pointing the finger at the other person, but look at the three that are pointing back at you. For the people that need a little visual on that, if you put your hand out in front of you and you point across the room, point at another person, that finger that's pointing at someone else, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. So taking responsibility for how you're showing up and getting brutally honest with yourself of what you're doing to create the situation in your life, and then not guilting or shaming yourself, but being thankful that you have the awareness now, that you can make some small transitions. Do things drastically change overnight? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but you can take action steps in gratitude to shift your life to being better.
And I think those are all really valid points. The root of everything that you said is acceptance. It's acceptance of the present moment more than anything. It's been my experience working with the hundreds and hundreds of patients over the past few years and specializing in anxiety, stress, and depression that the root that I've noticed is a lack of presence. And the quickest way to alleviate emotional challenges within reason is a shift into the present moment. To be grateful for whatever was, whatever is, and whatever will be is probably one of the best ways that we can see our lives. It uses gratitude to parlay into acceptance, which shifts us into the present moment. There will always be challenging times. That is a guarantee, and there are very few guarantees in life. But with that being said, we need to be grateful for the moments that don't feel good, with the understanding that everything is constantly changing anyway. We get really trapped into this mindset of things are always going to be this way, and that's just not true. It might feel like that in the moment, but if we can inject gratitude and then allowance and using whatever other presence tools are available to us, we'll see how quickly life can change, how quickly we can stop holding on to the things that don't feel good to us, because that is a choice as well. And I think we forget at times that we have a choice. We can choose how we want to feel. We don't have to be a victim of circumstance or of our emotions. We forget that very quickly, actually. And it takes a presence tool like gratitude, more than anything, to shift us out of that mindset, that lack mindset, that stuck mindset. And so, my hope is with this podcast that we have conveyed an important message to you that gratitude is something that needs to be focused on. It's something that you have to think about. It's a tool that needs to be used. It's an exercise that needs to be performed daily. Whether you're feeling good or not, especially if you're feeling good, then you definitely need to use gratitude. And with all that being said, I want to thank you, Tami, for taking your time today for talking about your life. And sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable, to share the experiences that have molded us, that have led us to where we are, that have created us to who we are now, and that are helping to push us into who we want to be ultimately. So the gratitude to you.
Thank you.
If our audience is interested in learning a little bit more about you, how can they get a hold of you?
Right now, the easiest way to get a hold of me, you can find me on Facebook. I have a personal page, but I would prefer if everybody would go to my business page. It's Tami Sharp, and that's Tami Sharp, Sharp, and it's Tami Sharp Love Coach. Go ahead, like that, send me comments. You can also go to my website, which is unshakableroots.com, and that's unshakable without an E in there. Or you can email me at unshakableroots@gmail.com as well. Those are the best ways of getting a hold of me. I am happy to talk openly and vulnerably about my story and to listen with no judgment to your story. Like I said before, with the guilt and shame, we all got to let that go. We need to be thankful and be okay. And yes, again, repeating because it's important, but acceptance of what is. And you have the power to shift into what you want. We definitely can teach you tools how to do that. And one thing I do want to include in with the gratitude before we wrap this up is how important breathing is. Taking in a deep, deep, deep breath, not just into your chest, but into your diaphragm, into your belly, breathing deeply, holding it, and doing that several times, especially when you're being challenged. To take that deep breath and to sometimes you do have to dig deep. I've been challenged this week myself with some situations where I have gotten into my ego and I have had a hard time finding gratitude, but I sit there and I really just breathe and find any little straw of gratitude that I can, the smallest thing. And once I've found that, I can build on that. So yes, please do. Please, please, please. I would say the best way is Facebook for now to find me. So Tami Sharp Love Coach. Like it.
Perfect. Tami, thank you for joining us. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And I want to welcome everyone back into the present moment.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.